All right, let's go to another one here. Tony Pollard goes from the Dallas Cowboys to the Tennessee Titans. We've talked a lot about Tony Pollard being a disappointment this past season. We talked about it in the off season here. You know, it was his first year leading the backfield with Ezekiel Elliott out. He was also coming off that broken leg, right? And I think there was a slower start. I mean, you look at the numbers and there definitely was a slower start in those first 10 weeks of the season compared to what he did from weeks 11 on. So I feel like Tony Pollard is kind of one of those players that is primed for like a really nice bounce back. Now, Tennessee is going to be an interesting offense. It's not going to be nearly as good as what the Dallas Cowboys were. So, Nate, I'll start with you for this one. What are your expectations for, I guess, Tony Pollard in Tennessee now?
I gotta say, my biggest fantasy takeaway from Tony Pollard actually had nothing to do with Tony Pollard. I think he's going to be a fine running back. I think he's going to be probably exactly what we probably wanted, or maybe not exactly what we wanted, but something closer to what we wanted last season coming out. Like I think that was where our sort of expectations were very high. But you mentioned the splits in like the first half of the season. Week 11 on, led the league in PFF rushing grade. Like we saw pretty much all of his efficiency metrics increase: yards per carry, missed forced tackle rate, yards after contact per attempt. Like he dominated, from weeks 11 onward. And I do think that that's probably going to be more indicative of what we're going to see out of Tony Pollard than the first half of the season. So not worried about Tony Pollard, but I do want to give a quick shout out to Tyjae Spears. May he rest in peace, because I am totally and completely devastated. I thought that this was going to be an interesting year for Tyjae Spears. Average 4.5 yards per carry, 70 targets as a rookie, 52 receptions, 838 scrimmage yards, 26% missed forced tackle rate, 3.1 yards after contact per attempt. I was really encouraged by what we saw out of Tyjae Spears in year one. Obviously, there's like some long-term health concerns there that I think probably, had some hesitation about buying into him long-term. But I honestly kind of thought that was part of the intrigue in signing a guy like him, because, a rookie, play him on his rookie deal and then you're done. I'm mourning right now. I'm in mourning.
Yeah, I feel like there was definitely some risk with Tyjae Spears, right? I'm very excited about him as well. I liked him coming out even with the injury concerns. And I know that there was definitely hope that he could kind of take over with Derrick Henry out. And when we wrote up the ideal landing spots again, I think I put Josh Jacobs in Tennessee, and Nate got mad at me for killing Tyjae Spears as well. So Nate, where are you at with Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard potentially sharing touches in any kind of way here in Tennessee?
Yeah, I think this is good for the Titans and bad for fantasy. You play these running back musical chairs in your head leading up to free agency. And I was hoping more of like an AJ Dillon and Alexander Madison to kind of split that workload so Spears could be the better fantasy option of the two there. But I think Pollard, like we were saying, I think he'll still be one of the better running backs in the league. I would blame last year on the injury. So I think Pollard can still be very effective, but he won't see as much playing time in Tennessee as he did in Dallas. There's more competition in Tennessee, and the offensive line isn't as good in Tennessee. So I think for a lot of reasons, we shouldn't expect Pollard to be as good as he was at the end of last season. And then similarly, Spears, we know last year he was getting all of the receiving work. Pollard's at least a little more capable of playing on receiving downs than Derrick Henry was. So even then, like, Spears was playing in every single passing situation, and now it might be a little bit more strict to third downs, or we could see just like a 2/3, 1 split between the two running backs. So obviously it'll be a situation where if there's an injury to one of the two running backs, I could see really big things for the healthy running back. But as long as the two are playing together, it's going to be hard. I think Tony Pollard can still be a fantasy starter, but it's just not ideal. Ideally, those two running backs would be the lead running backs on different teams.
I hear you. Yeah, for sure. I was very high on Tony Pollard last offseason, right? Like he was, I think, probably top 5.
We were all high on Tony Pollard last season, my man.
Of course, right? There was plenty to love, right? Especially in that Dallas offense, right? And it's just a completely different offense, right? From Dallas to Tennessee, especially the offensive line as well. So as high as I was on Tony Pollard, like Kate said, I feel like we can be closer to those expectations at the start of the year, but I'm not putting him necessarily in that RB1 territory for all the same reasons that you mentioned as well, Nate, right? Like he's probably going to be closer to like that high end RB2 for me at this point. So we'll see if anything changes this offseason, what kind of help they add to the offensive line there in Tennessee. But that's kind of where I'm at with Pollard right now. I don't want him necessarily as my RB1, but I'd be very happy with him as my RB2.